Hey everyone, I'm Olivia Smith, 22, from Atlanta, Georgia. When I was 10, my mom, Emily, passed away, leaving me $100,000 to secure my future. But my dad, Robert, had other plans. After marrying Karen Davis, he stole every penny to open a furniture store when I was 15, ignoring my desperate pleas. That betrayal crushed me, leaving me feeling like a stranger in my own family, alone and unheard. I vowed to fight back and reclaim what Mom left me. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments, and if you've ever been betrayed by family, smash that like and subscribe button. This is my story of battling for justice. Let's rewind to my teenage years, when Dad's choice to prioritize his new family over me sparked a fire I'd carry for years. Okay, let's dive into the thick of it. Those teenage years, from 15 to 17, were like living in a pressure cooker that just wouldn't stop hissing. I was stuck in my dad's house in Atlanta, Georgia, with him, his new wife, Karen Davis, and their two kids, Jacob and Emma. Jacob was 10, all gangly limbs and loud video games, and Emma was 8, always trailing Karen like a shadow. The house was supposed to be home, but it felt more like a battlefield, and I was the odd one out, fighting a war nobody else seemed to see. My mom, Emily, had left me a $100,000 when she passed away, money meant for my future. But my dad, Robert, had taken it all to open his shiny furniture store with Karen. That betrayal wasn't just a wound. It was a fire that burned hotter every day. I couldn't let it go. How could I? Mom had worked her whole life, scrimping and saving to make sure I'd have a shot at something better. She was a nurse, always pulling double shifts, her hands rough from work but soft when she tucked me in. That $100,000 was her love, her sacrifice, and Dad treated it like pocket change for his new family's dreams. Every time I saw his store's sign, Smith's Home Furnishings, all bold and proud on Peachtree Road, I wanted to scream. He'd look at me with those tired eyes saying, "Olivia, it's for the family." But I wasn't his family anymore. Not really. Karen's sharp glances and Jacob and Emma's oblivious chatter made that clear. Have you ever felt like you're screaming and nobody hears you? That was my life. It started small, my rebellion. At 15, I'd mutter under my breath when Dad praised the store's success at dinner, his fork waving like he was some big-shot entrepreneur. Karen would narrow her eyes, her lips a thin line, but I didn't care. Things escalated at a family reunion when I was 16, out in my cousin's backyard under string lights and smoky barbecue. The whole extended family was there. Uncles, aunts, second cousins, the works. Dad was holding court, boasting about the store's new showroom, when I snapped. I stood up, my paper plate shaking in my hands, and shouted, "You wouldn't have that store if you hadn't stolen Mom's $100,000. The chatter stopped. Forks froze midair. My cousin Trey dropped his beer. Dad's face went red, then pale, and Karen hissed, "Olivia, you're embarrassing yourself." Embarrassing? No, I was done being invisible. That moment felt like a release, but it came with a price. Karen didn't just let it slide. She started whispering to anyone who'd listen. Neighbors, PTA moms, even my school's guidance counselor. That I was troubled, a problem child, acting out because I couldn't handle my dad's new marriage. It was a lie, but lies stick in a place like Atlanta, where gossip spreads faster than kudzu. Suddenly, the neighbors who used to wave stopped making eye contact. Mrs. Carter next door, who'd always slip me cookies, started locking her gate when I passed. At school, my friends, well, people I thought were friends, started drifting away. I'd catch them whispering in the cafeteria, their eyes darting to me before looking away. "She's got issues," I overheard Jessica, my lab partner, say. Issues? Yeah, I had one big issue. My dad was a thief. School became a lonely place. I'd eat lunch alone under the bleachers, my sandwich tasting like cardboard, wondering how everything had flipped so fast. Karen's rumors painted me as the villain, and I couldn't fight a shadow. It hurt, deeper than I'd admit, to be ostracized for telling the truth. Have you ever been punished for doing what's right? It's like the world's turned upside down. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying Mom's voice telling me to be strong. I wanted to make her proud, but I felt like I was drowning in a house that wasn't mine anymore. Then Dad made it worse. A few months after the reunion, he sat me down in the living room, his hands clasped like he was delivering some grand speech. "Olivia," he said, "the store's hitting a rough patch. We need to tighten our belts. I'm cutting your allowance." I stared at him, my jaw tight. My allowance was $20 a week, barely enough for gas to get to school, and he was taking it? "You're joking," I said, but his face was stone. "It's temporary," he added, but I saw Karen smirking in the kitchen doorway. Temporary my foot. That store was bleeding money, and I was the one paying for it. Again. I stormed out, slamming my bedroom door so hard the frame rattled. Without an allowance, I was stuck. School supplies, clothes, even tampons. I had to figure it out myself. I started looking for work, pounding the pavement in our neighborhood, my sneakers worn thin from walking. Most places turned me away. Too young, no experience. Finally, I landed a job at Rosie's Diner, a greasy spoon off Buford Highway. It was grueling. I'd bust tables, scrub ketchup stains, and dodge creepy customers for $7.25 an hour, plus tips that barely covered a coffee. Shifts ran late, sometimes till midnight, and I'd drag myself home, reeking of fries, to do homework by flashlight because Karen complained if I left lights on. I was exhausted, my grades slipping, but I had no choice. Dad's family wasn't helping me. The diner was my first taste of how unfair life could be. My boss, a guy named Carl with a permanent scowl, would dock my pay for being a minute late, even if I was stuck in traffic from a double shift. Customers weren't much better. Some left pennies as tips, others nothing but complaints. I'd grit my teeth, thinking of Mom's money, knowing every sore muscle was because Dad chose his store over me. It wasn't just the work, it was the humiliation. I'd see classmates come in, giggling with their parents, while I wiped their tables. Once, Jessica from school smirked and said, "Didn't know you were a waitress now." I wanted to throw her milkshake in her face, but I just smiled and walked away. Pride doesn't pay bills. Karen didn't make it easier. She'd snipe at me when I got home, saying things like, "If you're so tired, maybe don't cause so much drama." Drama? She was the one spinning lies. One night, I overheard her on the phone, telling someone I was out of control and needed help. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. She wasn't just stealing my money. She was stealing my reputation, my place in the world. And Dad? He'd just sigh like I was the problem, not the woman turning his daughter into a pariah. Have you ever had someone rewrite your story to make you the bad guy? It's suffocating. My only lifeline was Aunt Linda Evans, Mom's sister. She lived across town in a small duplex, and I'd bike over whenever I could, my legs burning from the ride. Linda was everything Dad wasn't, fierce, loyal, with Mom's warm brown eyes. She'd make me tea, sit me down, and listen as I poured out my anger. "Your mom would be furious," she'd say, her voice steady. "That money was for you, Olivia. Don't let them take your fight." She'd tell me stories about Mom, how she'd planned to send me to college, maybe even abroad. Those talks kept Mom's memory alive, like a candle in the dark. Linda didn't just sympathize, she fueled me. "You're stronger than they know," she'd say. "Plan your move." I started to. At night, after diner shifts, I'd scribble in a notebook, mapping out my escape. I was 16, too young to sue, but I researched online, sneaking onto the school library's computers to read about inheritance laws. It was overwhelming. Legal jargon, court cases, words like fiduciary duty that made my head spin. But every article, every forum post, was a step toward understanding what Dad had done. He wasn't just a bad father, he'd broken the law. That realization was like armor. I wasn't just angry, I was right. The diner job, the rumors, the loneliness, they were piling up, crushing me some days. I'd cry in the bathroom at school, splashing water on my face so no one could tell. But I kept going. I had to. Mom's voice in my head wouldn't let me quit. By 17, I was counting the days till I could leave Dad's house, my notebook now filled with plans, not just dreams. I didn't know how I'd do it, but I'd get that $100,000 back. Karen's lies, Dad's excuses, the weight of being the troubled kid, it all made me tougher. I wasn't just fighting for money, I was fighting for Mom, for me, for the girl who deserved better than being erased. As my 17th birthday approached, I felt a shift. The fire in me wasn't just anger anymore, it was purpose. I started saving every dime from the diner, hiding cash in a shoebox under my bed. Karen could spread her rumors, Dad could cut me off, but they couldn't stop me. I was already looking ahead, toward a day when I'd face them not as a kid, but as someone they couldn't ignore. That reunion outburst wasn't the end, it was the beginning. I was ready to take my fight to the next level, even if it meant standing alone. Turning 17 felt like flipping a switch. The anger that had been simmering since I called out my dad at that family reunion wasn't just a spark anymore, it was a blueprint. I wasn't just dreaming of getting Mom's $100,000 back, I was ready to make it happen. Living in Atlanta with my dad, Robert, and his wife, Karen, had taught me one thing: waiting for fairness was a fool's game. I'd saved every penny from my shifts at Rosie's Diner, stashed in that shoebox under my bed, and my notebook was filled with scraps of legal research. But I needed more than grit and Google. I needed a real plan, someone who could turn my fight into something bigger than a teenager's grudge. That's when I decided to find a lawyer, no matter what it took. I couldn't just walk into a law firm with my apron still smelling of grease. I had to be smart, move in secret, because Karen's eyes were everywhere. She'd already turned half the neighborhood against me with her troubled teen lies. So I turned to my Uncle James Evans, Mom's brother, who'd always had my back. James was a quiet guy, a mechanic with hands stained from engine oil. But he had a sharp mind and a heart as loyal as Aunt Linda's. I biked to his garage one humid Saturday, my legs aching from a double shift. "I want to sue Dad," I said, no preamble. James set down his wrench, wiped his brow, and nodded. "I know someone," he said. "Sarah Thompson. She's tough, takes cases like yours." My pulse raced. This was real. Meeting Sarah was my first step into a world I barely understood. I snuck out after school telling Karen I was studying at the library, a lie she didn't bother to check. Sarah's office was in a nondescript building downtown, all glass and faded carpet. I was nervous, clutching my notebook like a lifeline, but when I sat across from her, something clicked. Sarah was in her 40s, with a no-nonsense bob and eyes that saw right through excuses. I spilled everything: Mom's will, the $100,000, Dad's furniture store, how he'd brushed me off when I begged him to stop. She leaned forward, jotting notes. "This sounds like embezzlement," she said. "It's a strong case, but it'll be a long fight. Can you handle that?" I nodded, even though my stomach twisted. Long meant expensive, and I was barely scraping by. Sarah laid it out. We'd need evidence: bank records, Mom's will, proof Dad misused my inheritance. She'd work pro bono for now, but court fees and future costs would add up. I left her office feeling like I'd just climbed a mountain only to see a bigger one ahead. But I wasn't turning back. James offered to help dig up documents, and I spent late nights at Linda's duplex, poring over old files Mom had left. We found her will in a dusty box, its pages yellowed but clear: $100,000 for Olivia Smith, to be held in trust until 18. Seeing Mom's signature felt like hearing her voice again. I also tracked down bank statements from when Dad transferred the money, my hands shaking as I realized how deliberately he'd betrayed me. But money was a problem. Rosie's Diner wasn't cutting it anymore. I was already exhausted, juggling school and late shifts, but Sarah's words about costs echoed. So I took on double shifts, working weekends and holidays, my body aching from carrying trays and scrubbing counters. Carl, my boss, was merciless. If I was late, even by a minute, he'd slash my tips. I'd come home at 2 a.m., my sneakers sticky with soda, and collapse, only to wake up at 6 for school. My grades, already shaky from last year's chaos, started slipping further. Teachers noticed, but I couldn't tell them why. How do you explain you're fighting your own dad for stealing your future? It felt like I was carrying a secret heavier than the diner's grease traps. Then came the family intervention, like a punch I didn't see coming. It was a Sunday just after my 17th birthday. I'd been at Linda's sorting bank records when Uncle Michael and Aunt Susan showed up at Dad's house where I still lived. They'd called ahead, insisting I be there, and Dad and Karen were waiting in the living room, Jacob and Emma sent upstairs. I walked in, wary, and saw their faces. Michael's stern, Susan's tearful, Dad's blank, Karen's smug. "We need to talk, Olivia," Michael said, like I was a kid caught stealing cookies. They sat me down, and it felt like a trial. Michael started, his voice low. "This lawsuit you're planning, it's tearing the family apart. Jacob and Emma are innocent. If you win, their lives will be ruined. The store's all your dad has." I felt my face burn. Ruined? "What about my life?" Susan chimed in, dabbing her eyes. "You're being selfish, Olivia. Family means sacrifice. Drop this, for their sake." Karen nodded, her arms crossed like she'd won already. Dad just stared at the floor. I wanted to scream, but I took a breath. "Selfish?" I said, my voice steady. "Dad stole $100,000 from me. Mom's money. I'm not their parent. He is. Why should I pay for his choices?" Michael shook his head like I was hopeless. "You don't get it. You're hurting kids who did nothing wrong." I stood up, my chair scraping. "Dad hurt me first. I'm done sacrificing." I walked out, their voices fading behind me. That intervention shook me more than I'd admit. I biked to Linda's, my eyes stinging, replaying their words. Selfish, hurting kids. Was I the bad guy? Linda saw my face and pulled me into a hug. "They're wrong," she said. "Your mom would have fought for you, and you're doing the same." Her words patched me up, but the doubt lingered. I'd always thought family was supposed to protect you, not guilt you into silence. Have you ever had people you love turn against you for doing what's right? It's like a knife twisting slowly. The next blow came at school, and it was Karen's doing. Again. My guidance counselor, Ms. Harper, called me in one afternoon. She was usually kind, but her face was tight, like she'd swallowed something sour. "Olivia," she said, "I've heard you're struggling emotionally. There's talk you're unstable, maybe not ready for college." My stomach dropped. Unstable? Then it hit me. Karen had been at a PTA meeting, cozying up to school staff. She'd fed Ms. Harper lies, the same troubled teen garbage she'd spread everywhere. I tried to explain. My dad, the money, the lawsuit, but Ms. Harper just nodded, unconvinced. "I'm recommending a psych evaluation," she said. "It could affect your college applications." I left her office numb. The University of Georgia was my dream, my ticket out, and now it was at risk. I spent days drafting appeals, meeting teachers to vouch for me, all while working and gathering evidence. It was like running a marathon with weights on my legs. I'd sit in the school library, red-eyed, writing essays to prove I wasn't unstable, while classmates laughed outside. The unfairness of it burned. Karen wasn't just stealing my money, she was trying to steal my future. I'd lie awake, wondering if I was strong enough. But then I'd touch Mom's will, tucked in my bag, and remember why I was fighting. James was a godsend. He'd spend weekends with me, combing through old bank records, calling contacts to verify transactions. One night, we found a transfer receipt. Dad moving $100,000 to his store's account the day after Karen's wedding. It was like a smoking gun. "This is it," James said, his voice low. "He can't deny this." I hugged him, tears prickling. For the first time, I felt like I could win, but winning meant more than evidence. It meant surviving. By 18, I was ready to leave Dad's house for good. I'd saved $3,000 from the diner, enough for a deposit on a room at Linda's. Moving day was quiet. I packed my clothes, my notebook, and Mom's old photo, leaving without a goodbye. Dad didn't stop me. Karen just smirked. I felt free, but terrified. The lawsuit was my lifeline, but the costs, emotional, financial, personal, were piling up. Michael and Susan's words echoed, and the counselor's report loomed like a storm cloud. I was betting everything on Sarah and that courtroom. Have you ever staked your whole life on one fight? I was scared, but Mom's memory kept me going. As I settled into Linda's, I doubled down. Sarah filed the initial papers, and I worked triple shifts some weeks, my body screaming for rest. The diner was hell. Carl docked my pay when a customer complained, and tips dried up during slow months, but every dollar went to Sarah's fund, every sleepless night to evidence. I was no longer the kid yelling at barbecues. I was a woman building a case brick by brick against the man who'd betrayed me. The road ahead was long, but I was ready to run it, no matter what or who tried to stop me. Stepping into that Atlanta courtroom for the first time in 2019 felt like walking into a lion's den with nothing but a paper shield. I was 18, fresh out of my dad's house, living with Aunt Linda, and barely holding it together between Rosie's diner shifts and my new life at the University of Georgia. The lawsuit against my dad, Robert, for stealing Mom's $100,000 inheritance was no longer just a plan. It was real, with Sarah Thompson, my lawyer, leading the charge. But real also meant brutal. The next 3 years, from 2019 to 2022, would test every ounce of strength I had, throwing curveballs that made me question if I could keep going. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about proving I wasn't the troubled kid Karen had painted me as. It was about Mom's legacy, and I'd fight tooth and nail to protect it. The first hearing set the tone. I sat in the courtroom, my palms sweaty, watching Dad across the aisle. He looked older, his hair grayer, but his face was all defiance. His lawyer, a slick guy in a cheap suit, argued the $100,000 was invested in the furniture store for family benefit, and since it was gone, there was nothing to repay. Dad leaned into the victim act, his voice soft as he talked about Jacob and Emma, his kids with Karen, needing stability. "I'm just a father trying to provide," he said, glancing at the judge. I wanted to scream. Provide? He'd provided nothing but betrayal for me. Sarah countered with Mom's will, clear as day. The money was mine, not his to invest. The judge nodded, but said we'd need more proof. It was a start, but I left feeling like I'd run a marathon with no finish line. Balancing the lawsuit in college was like juggling fire. I'd enrolled at UGA, studying business, determined to build the future Mom wanted for me. But court dates didn't care about midterms. I'd drive 2 hours from Athens to Atlanta, my beat-up Honda rattling, to sit in hearings, then race back for classes, my head spinning. Money was tight. Diner tips barely covered gas. And Linda helped with rent, but I hated leaning on her. My grades teetered. A C in accounting stung, especially after a professor sighed. "You seem distracted, Olivia." Distracted? Try fighting your dad in court while dodging Karen's lies. Have you ever felt like you're splitting yourself in two just to survive? That was my life, and I was barely keeping up. Dad's tactics got dirtier as the case dragged on. By 2020, he'd leaned hard into the struggling dad narrative, bringing Jacob and Emma to a hearing to sit behind him, their wide eyes scanning the room. It was a cheap move, and it worked on some. Aunt Susan, who'd already turned on me during that intervention, testified for him, saying, "Robert's a good father, Olivia's just angry." Angry? Try robbed. I clenched my fists under the table, Sarah whispering, "Stay calm." But calm was hard when I saw relatives I'd once trusted, like Cousin Trey, who'd been at the reunion, avoid my gaze in the hallway. Dad wasn't just fighting with lawyers, he was rewriting our story, making me the villain in a family I didn't recognize. Then came a gut punch we didn't see coming. Sarah had lined up a key witness, Maria, a former store employee, who'd seen Dad transfer my inheritance to the business account. Maria was nervous but willing, until she wasn't. A week before her deposition, she called Sarah, voice shaking, and backed out. "I can't," she said. "They threatened my job." They meant Karen. Sarah later learned Karen had cornered Maria at a coffee shop, hinting she'd blacklist her from retail jobs in Atlanta if she testified. I was livid. Karen wasn't just a liar, she was a bully pulling strings to protect her precious store. Sarah scrambled to rebuild our case, but the loss hurt. Without Maria, we leaned harder on bank records, and I felt the ground shift under me. How do you fight when your opponent plays dirty? The hearings piled up, each one a battle. Sarah presented transfer receipts, showing Dad moved the $100,000 the day after Karen's wedding, but his lawyer spun it as business expansion for family security. I'd sit there, my heart pounding, as the judge scribbled notes, her face unreadable. Between hearings, I'd study in UGA's library, my laptop open to case law instead of textbooks. Sleep was a memory. I'd nap in my car between classes, my neck stiff, dreaming of Mom's smile. Linda would call, her voice a lifeline. "You're doing what she'd do," she'd say. But some nights, alone in my dorm, I'd wonder if I was strong enough. The lawsuit was a beast, and I was barely 19, fighting a war most adults would have quit. Karen's next move took the fight public, and it nearly broke me. In 2021, as the case gained traction, she leaked a story to a local Atlanta blog, Peachtree Pulse. The headline screamed, "Greedy daughter sues struggling father over family business." The article twisted everything, calling me a bitter teen out to destroy Dad's American dream for Jacob and Emma. It quoted anonymous sources, Karen's friends no doubt, saying I was ungrateful, unstable, chasing money I didn't deserve. I found out when a classmate texted me the link, her message blunt, "Is this you?" My stomach churned. I read the comments. "Spoiled brat. She should be ashamed. Hope she loses everything." Strangers were tearing me apart, and I hadn't said a word. The harassment exploded online. My Instagram, already private from Karen's earlier rumors, got flooded with DMs, some calling me a gold digger, others worse. I'd scroll through them, my hands shaking, then slam my phone down. At UGA, whispers followed me. A guy in my econ class muttered, "That's the girl from the article," loud enough for me to hear. I wanted to disappear, but I couldn't. The blog post spread to X, where trolls piled on, one saying, "Bet she's lying about the will." Lying? Mom's will was my anchor, and they were spitting on it. I stopped checking my phone, but the hate seeped into my dreams, waking me in a cold sweat. Have you ever been attacked for something you didn't do? It's like drowning in someone else's story. I almost cracked. One night I called Linda sobbing. "Maybe I should stop," I said. "They're making me the bad guy." She was quiet, then firm. "You're not the bad guy, Olivia. You're the one fighting for what's right. Don't let their noise drown you out." Sarah echoed her, meeting me at a diner, not Rosie's, thank God, to strategize. "We're close," she said. "They're scared, that's why they're hitting hard." Close meant evidence, and Sarah had been digging. She'd found a second set of bank records buried in an old account showing Dad's transfers weren't just sloppy, they were deliberate, dated to dodge scrutiny. It was a lifeline, but I was still reeling from the public shaming. The harassment took a toll. I'd walk to class, my hood up, feeling eyes on me. My econ professor pulled me aside, asking if I was okay, her tone implying the article was true. I mumbled I was fine, but I wasn't. My grades dipped. A B in marketing felt like failure. I'd study, but the words blurred, my mind stuck on court dates and hate comments. I cut back diner shifts to focus on school, but that meant less money for Sarah's fees, piling on guilt. Linda loaned me $500, which I hated taking. I felt like I was failing Mom, failing myself, and the weight was crushing. But those bank records kept me going. They were proof, cold and hard, that Dad wasn't a victim. He was a thief. By late 2021, Sarah rebuilt the case without Maria. The new records were damning, showing Dad had rerouted my money through multiple accounts, a clear violation of his trustee role. At a hearing, Sarah laid them out, her voice sharp as she pointed to dates and signatures. Dad's lawyer stammered, caught off guard, and I saw Dad's face tighten. The judge ordered a deeper audit, and I felt a spark of hope, like the tide was turning. But hope was fragile. Karen's article still haunted me, and I'd catch Dad's relatives, like Trey, liking posts bashing me on X. The betrayal wasn't just Dad's anymore. It was a family turning their backs. As 2022 loomed, I was 21, battle-worn but standing. The lawsuit had consumed me. Court, college, harassment, all blurring into one long fight. I'd lost friends, grades, and sleep, but I hadn't lost Mom's will or Sarah's grit. Each hearing chipped away at Dad's lies, and I could feel the finish line, even if it was miles off. Karen's smears and Dad's sob stories were loud, but the truth was louder. I was ready for the next round, no matter how much it hurt, because giving up wasn't an option. Mom deserved better, and so did I. The Atlanta courtroom in early 2022 was stifling, the air thick with tension as I sat rigid, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles ached. I was 21, 3 years deep into a lawsuit that had consumed my life, from diner shifts to UGA classes to battling Dad's lies and Karen's smears. The bank records Sarah Thompson, my lawyer, had uncovered, proof Dad had deliberately funneled Mom's $100,000 into his furniture store, had shifted the tide. But after losing a witness and enduring that brutal Peachtree Pulse article, I was braced for anything. This was it, the moment I'd fought for since I was 15, when Dad chose his new family over me. I could feel Mom's will tucked in my bag, like a quiet strength urging me forward. The judge's verdict was coming, and no matter what, I wasn't the scared teen from that family reunion anymore. I was ready. The hearing started slow, Sarah laying out the final evidence with precision. She pointed to the transfer dates, the signatures, the accounts Dad had used to hide my inheritance. His lawyer, flustered, repeated the same tired line. The money was invested for family benefit, and Dad couldn't repay what was spent. But the judge wasn't buying it. She leaned forward, her glasses glinting, and asked Dad directly, "Mr. Smith, did you have authorization to use your daughter's trust?" Dad mumbled something about family needs, his eyes on the floor. Karen, sitting behind him, shifted, her face a mask of barely contained fury. I caught Jacob and Emma's confused glances. They were there again, props in Dad's pity play. My stomach twisted, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about them. It was about Mom, about me. When the judge spoke, time slowed. "The evidence shows clear breach of fiduciary duty," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "Mr. Smith, you are ordered to liquidate Smith's home furnishings to repay the $100,000, plus $20,000 in punitive damages to Olivia Smith." The gavel fell, and my breath caught. I'd won. After years of diner grease, sleepless nights, and public shaming, I'd won. Sarah squeezed my arm, her smile tight but proud. Dad slumped, his face ashen, while Karen bolted up, her heels clicking as she stormed out. I wanted to feel joy, but it was heavier, like a weight lifting only to reveal scars underneath. Have you ever won something that cost you so much it didn't feel like winning? That was me, sitting in that courtroom, victorious but bruised. I left the courthouse, the February air sharp against my skin, expecting relief. But Karen was waiting outside, her eyes blazing. "You think you're clever," she spat, stepping close enough I could smell her perfume. "You've destroyed us, Olivia. Jacob and Emma's future, gone. I hope you're happy." Her words were venom, and for a second, I faltered, picturing those kids. But then I remembered Mom's will, her sacrifice. "You destroyed us first," I said, my voice steady. "That was Mom's money, not yours." I walked away, her curses fading behind me, but her words clung like damp clothes. I'd reclaimed my inheritance, but the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The victory should have been clean, but Karen wasn't done playing dirty. A week after the ruling, Sarah called with bad news. The store's sale was stalled. Karen had hidden assets, inventory, accounts, even a second lease, making it look like the business was worth less than it was. "She's trying to lowball the liquidation," Sarah said, her voice tight. "We need to audit everything, but it'll cost time and money." My heart sank. I'd thought the gavel was the end, but this was another battle. Court fees were mounting, and my savings, scraped from years at Rosie's Diner, were nearly gone. I'd cut shifts to focus on UGA, and Linda's loans were all I had left. I took out a small student loan, hating every signature, and gave Sarah the green light to fight. It felt like Karen was stealing from me all over again. The audit dragged into spring, each delay a needle under my skin. Sarah hired a forensic accountant who found Karen had siphoned off $30,000 to a personal account, claiming it was back pay. Back pay? She'd been living off my inheritance while I scrubbed tables. We filed motions, went to more hearings, and I'd sit there, my UGA backpack at my feet, watching Dad's lawyer dodge questions. The judge wasn't amused. She ordered a full asset seizure, but it meant waiting months for the sale to finalize. My loan payments loomed, and I started tutoring classmates for cash, squeezing sessions between classes. I was exhausted, my eyes permanently red, but giving up wasn't an option. Karen wanted me to break, but I'd come too far. The financial strain was bad, but the emotional cost hit harder. I'd had one close friend at UGA, Maya, who'd been my rock through the lawsuit. We'd study together, share cheap coffee, and laugh about professors. She knew about the case, the article, the harassment, and never judged. But in March, after Karen's latest stunt, I got a text from her. "I saw the blog posts again. I can't be part of this, Olivia. It's too much." My heart stopped. The Peachtree Pulse story had resurfaced, shared by Karen's allies on X, painting me as the greedy daughter ruining her dad's life. Maya, my one safe space, believed it, or at least didn't want the drama. I typed a reply, then deleted it. "Fine," I muttered, blocking her number. I cried in my dorm that night, the silence deafening. Have you ever lost someone you trusted because of someone else's lies? It's like a piece of you goes missing. Maya's betrayal left me reeling. I'd already lost Dad's family. Uncle Michael and Aunt Susan had stopped calling after the verdict, sending one last email. "You've hurt Jacob and Emma. We're done." Done? They'd chosen Dad's lies over me years ago. But losing Maya was different. She'd seen me, the real me, and still walked away. I stopped going to campus events, keeping my head down in lectures. The harassment from the blog had quieted, but its shadow lingered. Classmates still whispered. I felt like an island, with only Linda and Sarah as my anchors. Linda would cook me dinner, her voice soft. "You're stronger than this," she'd say. But strength felt like a lie when I was so alone. The family fallout deepened. At a hearing in April, Cousin Trey, who'd once been neutral, showed up to support Dad. He wouldn't meet my eyes, but I heard him tell Susan, "She's tearing us apart." Tearing us apart? I was fighting for what was mine. Dad's silence hurt most. He hadn't spoken to me since the ruling, just stared through me in court. Jacob and Emma were there, older now, their faces blank. I didn't hate them, but I couldn't carry their pain. Dad had made his choice, and I'd made mine. Still, the guilt Karen had thrown at me lingered, like a bruise I couldn't ignore. I pushed it down, focusing on Mom's will, her signature my North Star. Sarah kept me grounded. By summer, the accountant unraveled Karen's scheme, hidden accounts, faked invoices, all exposed. The judge ordered the store sold by August, no more delays. I felt a flicker of hope, but it was tempered by loss. The legal fees had eaten my savings, and tutoring barely covered groceries. I'd skipped spring break to work, watching classmates post beach photos while I graded papers. UGA was supposed to be my fresh start, but it felt like another battlefield. My grades stabilized. A B+ in finance was a small win, but I was running on fumes, my body and heart stretched thin. The store's sale loomed, and I braced for the payout. I'd sit in my dorm, calculating. $100,000, minus fees plus damages. It wasn't just money, it was Mom's dream for me. College, a home, a life. But the cost was steep. Dad was gone, his family with him. Maya's absence stung daily, and Karen's sabotage had nearly broken me. I'd won in court, but it felt like surviving a war, not celebrating a victory. I'd walk to class, my backpack heavy, and think of Mom's smile, her voice saying, "Keep going." So I did, even when it hurt. As August neared, the courtroom became my focus again. The final sale hearing was set, and Sarah was confident we'd close this chapter. I wasn't so sure. Karen had surprised us before. But I was different now, hardened by 3 years of fighting. The girl who'd yelled at a barbecue was gone. I was a woman who'd faced down lies, loss, and sabotage and still stood tall. Dad's store, his pride, was crumbling, and I'd made it happen. It was justice, bittersweet and raw, and I was ready to claim it, no matter what came next. August 2022 marked the end of one fight and the start of something new. The Atlanta courtroom's final gavel had fallen, and my dad's furniture store, built on Mom's stolen $100,000, was sold, the funds wired to my account after years of battles, lies, and losses. I was 21, a junior at the University of Georgia, and that money, plus the $20,000 in damages, was my lifeline to a future Mom had dreamed for me. But victory wasn't a fairy tale ending. The scars from Karen's schemes, the family I'd lost, and the friend who'd walked away, they lingered like shadows. Yet standing in my dorm, holding a bank statement with my name and 6 figures, I felt a quiet strength. This wasn't just about winning, it was about rising above everything that tried to break me. I was ready to build my life, but the world wasn't done testing me. The money changed everything, practically overnight. I paid off my student loan, the one I'd taken to cover Sarah Thompson's fees when Karen stalled the store's sale. That debt had been a chain, a reminder of how close I'd come to losing it all. With it gone, I breathed easier. I moved out of Linda's duplex, where I'd crashed since leaving Dad's house, and rented a small apartment in Atlanta. A 1-bedroom with creaky floors, but a view of the city skyline. It was mine, the first place that felt like home since Mom died. I enrolled full-time at UGA, no longer scraping by on partial credits, and registered for advanced business courses, dreaming of starting my own company someday. The rest of the money went into a savings account and a modest investment fund. Nothing flashy, just enough to grow slowly. Mom had taught me to plan, and I was honoring her every step. Setting up that apartment was a ritual of reclaiming myself. I hung Mom's old photo on the wall, her smile warm in black and white, and bought a cheap couch that didn't smell like Rosie's diner. Linda helped me move, her eyes misty as she hugged me. "Your mom would be so proud," she said, and I believed her. I'd sit on that couch at night, my laptop open, mapping out my future. Graduate by 23, maybe an MBA, then a business of my own. The $100,000 wasn't a fortune, but it was freedom. Freedom from the diner, from Dad's betrayal, from the weight of surviving. I felt like I was finally living for me, not just fighting to exist. Have you ever had a moment where you could finally exhale? That was my apartment, my sanctuary. But the past doesn't vanish just because you win. Karen's smear campaign, that Peachtree Pulse article calling me a greedy daughter, had left a digital footprint, and in late 2022, it reared up again. I'd made a new Instagram to reconnect with UGA classmates, hoping to rebuild after losing Maya. But one day, I opened it to find a flood of notifications. Trolls had found me. Someone had reposted the article on X, tagging me with hashtags like #ungratefulkid and #familydestroyer. The comments were brutal. "Bet she spent it all already." "Hope she's miserable." My chest tightened as I scrolled, the hate from strangers cutting deeper than I expected. I thought the lawsuit's end would silence them, but Karen's lies had a life of their own. The harassment wasn't just words. It was an invasion. I got DMs with threats, one saying, "Watch your back, princess." Another linked to a fake profile with my photo, captioned, "Olivia Smith, the girl who ruined her family." I froze, my hands shaking. Was this Karen again? Or just random cruelty? I didn't know, but it scared me. I privatized my accounts, deleted posts, and stopped sharing anything personal. UGA's campus, once a refuge, felt exposed. I'd scan crowds, wondering if a troll was nearby. I'd lie awake, my heart racing, questioning if fighting had been worth this. Have you ever had to hide who you are because of someone else's hate? It's like losing a piece of yourself, and I hated giving them that power. I confided in Linda, who urged me to report the threats. I did, but the police said anonymous accounts were hard to trace, and X's moderation was a joke. Sarah offered to sue for defamation, but I was done with courtrooms. I just want to move on, I told her. Moving on meant focusing on what I could control: school, my goals, mom's memory. I threw myself into UGA, joining a business club to network, even if I kept people at arm's length. My grades climbed. An A in entrepreneurship felt like a badge of survival. I'd study in my apartment, mom's photo watching, and tell myself, "You're not what they say." But the harassment was a reminder. Winning didn't erase the battle. Reflecting on the lawsuit, I had no regrets. Dad's choice to steal mom's money to prioritize Karen and their kids, Jacob and Emma, over me. That was on him, not me. The courtroom had proven it. He wasn't a struggling dad. He was a man who'd broken the law and my trust. Jacob and Emma, now 13 and 11, weren't my responsibility. Karen's accusations outside the courthouse, blaming me for their future, had stung. But I saw through her. If Dad hadn't stolen, their store would have failed on its own. He'd admitted in court it was mismanaged. I felt a pang for those kids, but I wasn't their savior. I was Mom's daughter, fighting for her promise, and I'd done what I had to. Guilt couldn't change facts. The family fallout was final. Uncle Michael and Aunt Susan hadn't spoken to me since their email, and Cousin Trey's cold shoulder at a hearing was my last memory of him. Dad hadn't reached out, not even a text. I'd seen him once, from a distance, at a grocery store, his shoulders hunched. I turned away, my heart heavy but resolute. They'd chosen their side, and I'd chosen mine. Linda and Uncle James were my family now, their support unwavering. Linda would say, "Blood doesn't make family, love does." She was right. Losing Dad's side hurt, but it freed me from their judgment, their expectations. I was done proving myself to people who'd never see me. The cost of the fight was steep, beyond money or family. I'd lost my innocence, that belief that family always protects you. The lawsuit had taken years, my savings, my grades, my peace. Maya's betrayal, the harassment, the whispers at UGA, they'd chipped away at my trust, but they'd also built something stronger. I'd learned to stand alone, to fight when the world said to quit. Every late night, every tear, every dollar from that diner had forged me into someone Mom would recognize, someone who didn't back down. I'd carry her strength, not just her money, for the rest of my life. If I could share one piece of advice, it's this: don't let guilt or fear stop you from claiming what's yours. People like Karen, like Dad, will try to make you feel selfish, small, unworthy. They'll use tears, kids, or lies to keep you quiet. Don't fall for it. Your worth isn't tied to their approval or their sob stories. You deserve what's rightfully yours, whether it's money, respect, or your own voice. Fight for it, even when it's hard, even when you're alone. Because giving up means letting them win, and you're worth more than their version of you. I learned that the hard way, and I'm stronger for it. The lesson I carry is simple but heavy. True strength is fighting for justice, even when it costs you everything else. I lost family, friends, and pieces of myself, but I gained something unbreakable. A sense of self that no one can steal. Mom's $100,000 was her gift, but this strength is mine, earned through every courtroom, every troll's comment, every night I refused to quit. Justice isn't just a verdict. It's knowing you stood up, no matter the price. I'd do it all again, not for the money, but for the girl I became, the one Mom always knew I could be. Now, I'm looking at you, my YouTube family. I've shared my story, from the pain to the triumph, and I want to hear yours. What's a time you stood up to betrayal, fought for what was yours, or rose above the noise? Drop it in the comments. I read every one, and your stories keep me going. If this hit home, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more real-life journeys like mine. Let's build this community, sharing how we overcome one story at a time. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for reminding me I'm not alone. I'll see you in the next video.